Welcome to LabMinutes.com. In this video, we're going to walk you through an installation of an Enterprise Certificate Authority server on Windows 2008. In addition, we will look at an SCEP protocol, and if you remember back in Windows 2003 Certificate Server, if you want to enable SCEP, you need to download and install the SCEP separately. But now, SCEP is a part of Network Device Enrollment Service built into Windows 2008. So let's take a look at our lab setup here real quick. It's pretty straightforward. You have a Windows machine running to Enterprise 2008 that's acting as a domain controller, and this is the machine that we're going to be installing a Certificate Authority service on it. We also have a test PC that's on the same subnet that we're going to use to test our web enrollment, and we also have a router R1 that we're going to use to test the SCEP protocol. So let's get started on our config. I already have the RDP session open on the Windows server. So the first thing that you need to do is go to Start, Administrative Tool, and open the Server Manager. Okay, so if you go to the role, and let's give it a moment. You go to Add Roles. Just going to go Next. And here we're going to check Active Directory Certificate Services. Here go Next. And next. You can see there's different services that's related to a certificate server that you can enable. So by default, certification authority is checked. We also need web enrollment, so we're going to check that as well. And since we do not have the web server or IIS service running, the server is basically prompting you to enable that particular service. So we're going to accept. And here's the bottom three services. You can see we will need that, but if you're trying to check it right now, it will say that it cannot be enabled if you do not have CA running. So you can see right here, complete your CA setup before setting up Network Device Enrollment Service. So here we're going to leave them unchecked for now. We're going to keep going, and we're going to be doing Enterprise CA and not a standalone. Okay, we go next. Since it's just the first server in our certificate server, we're going to choose these as a root CA and not a subordinate CA. And we're going to be creating a new private key. And with the key length, we're going to leave as default of 2048. So next, we're going to change the name of the CA to be LM root CA. And now domain name is LabMinutes.com. Let's go next. The validity period, we're going to leave it as default 5 years. Okay, and default database location next. And here we're starting to get into the IIS server installation. We're going to leave everything checked as the default. And at the summary page, just going to go ahead and install. Okay, so while we are waiting for that to complete, we're going to go ahead and create a user that we're going to be using for our NDES service. So here's the user, directory user and computer. I'm just going to create a new OU just to keep things separated from what's there by default. Just going to call LabMinutes and go new user, and we're going to call this particular user NDES underscore user. We'll click next, give it a password, and we'll make sure you cannot change the password and never expires. Next, go finish. Now we have to add that to a IIS user group. So add IIS, because that's the privilege that we need to request the certificate as part of the SCEP. So check name, OK, apply, OK, and that's done. Okay. Now it looks like our installation is still just completed. Everything succeeded, so we close. Okay, you can see now we have additional roles that show up for the certificate services. We'll come back to this in a moment. The next thing we want to do is we'll go to the CA page with the check mark green. It means it's running. So next we're gonna create our own certificate templates. So we right click and go manage. You can see the list of the templates that's been created for us by default. But we're gonna go ahead and create our own template by doing a duplicate of a template of the IPsec offline. So duplicate template. We're gonna do 2008 Enterprise. Let's go OK. We'll give it a new name. Just going to call them LM-IPsec offline request. And we'll do validity period of 5 years. We'll publish it to the AD. Let's see what else. Is signature encryption by default. Minimum key size, we're going to lower it to 1024. Subject name, keep it the same. On the security tab, we want to add or allow the NDES user that we created earlier. So check name, OK, and we want to allow it to enroll, read and enroll. Let's see, did I miss anything else? Let's see. Okay, I think we're good. And the reason that you might want to create your own template, because you can see you have number of tabs and number of parameters, attributes that you can customize to fit your needs. But if you compare that to one of the default template that's been created for you, you can see there's not much that you can change at all. So that would be a reason why you would need to create your own templates. So now that we have our new template, we go back to the certificate server page. And see here, it hasn't shown up yet. So what you need to do is right click new, and you have to issue it. And look for the one that we just created, which is LM IPsec offline request. Go OK. Now it's part of our list here. Okay, next we're going to go back and complete our CA roles. So server, manager. If you scroll down a little bit, you can see there's only 2 role services that's been installed so far, and we want the last 3, so we're going to go and add role services. Check the bottom 3, and again IIS warning, which is going to add the required role services. Keep going. Next. Here it's asking you for a user account for the NDES service. And you can see it must be added to the IIS user group, which we did already. So we're going to go ahead and do IDES user, and the password that we gave. Next, we're going to give the RA name, call LM CARA US. It's called webmaster at LabMinutes.com. Company LabMinutes. Department, it's called IT, City Irvine, and State CA. Okay, we're going to leave the key length to its default value. Now it's asking you to specify which certificate server that you want to use for issuing the certificate. And you can see, you can browse, but there's only one configure right now, so we're going to use the LM root CA. It's been selected already. Next. For the type of authentication, we're going to pick username and password. Next, here's ask you again for another user account. That should be used to communicate with the CA. We're just going to use the same one, NDES user. Okay, next. Here I can see there are two. It's asking you to select which certificate you want to use for SSL encryption when a user communicates to the server. So you can either use a self-signed certificate, root certificate, or you can use the one that has been issued to our domain controller already. And that's exactly what we're going to use. Let's go next. IIS. And again, we're going to leave everything at default. We go next. And here's a summary. Make sure everything is correct. And you can go ahead and install. Okay, we'll leave it run. Should not take too long here. Okay, while we're waiting, let's go back and take a look at our issue certificate. Right now we have only one that was issued to the domain controller. Okay, almost there. Okay, it's completed. Installation succeeded on all. So we close. Take a quick look at the certificate services. Now all 5 of them are shown install, so that's good. We'll go back to the certificate server. You can see that there are 2 additional certificates that's been issued to the RA. So enrollment agent. Alright, so the next step we're going to do is to modify the registry. So if you bring up reg edit, here you go to local machine, software, Microsoft. If you go to cryptography, SCEP, SCEP, and here you can see there's some default templates that will be used by the SCEP protocol. But since we have created our own customized template, we would need to update these. So let me go back to the certificate template page and bring up the name. So you can see template name is that, so we're going to change it to that. There will be LM-IPsec offline request. Okay, copy that, paste. The next thing we need to make sure is the permission. The NDES user has the full control permission. So apply. So good, cancel. Anytime you change the registry that's related to the MSCP, is always a good idea to come here and restart the certificate services as well as the World Wide Web services. Alright, so that is done. Let's bring up a Explorer. We now should have an active certificate service. So we go localhost, okay, that's great. So let's hop to our test PC since our server is ready, the certificate server is ready to hand out certificates. So let's hop onto our test PC here at the IP.16. Okay, we're going to bring up our browser. And we're going to go to https 172.16.32.40. Just proceed anyway. And since the machine that I'm using here is not part of the domain yet, that's why it's prompting you for credentials. So we're just going to use, for our testing purposes, the administrator credential, our accounts. Now we're logged in. Just take a quick look at our certificate that we have here, just to get information. You can see as part of the installation process earlier, we specified that we want to use the server certificate for the SSL communication, and that's what it is. So before we making a certificate request, we need to have that root CA server trusted by this machine. So first thing you want to do is download the CA certificate, and here click install CA, and just downloaded that. If you open it, you can see it's a self-signed root CA certificate. Just going to go ahead and install certificate. You can see it's not trusted yet with the red cross. And we're going to manually drop it under the trusted root certificate authority. Go next, finish, yes, and import succeeded. Now we go back and request certificate. We just want to do a user certificate with a 1024 key strength. Submit, and now the certificate is ready for us to install. So you can see the request was automatically approved by the server, which is the default setting on the Windows 2008. We're just going to go click install or save. Save link. I'm going to save to the desktop. Here, the issue to field is shown up as administrator, which is the username, and it's issued by the server. I'm going to go ahead and install certificate. And we're going to automatically select the store and finish. Okay. You can see that our root CA certificate is now trusted because we added that root certificate earlier. So just to take a look where the certificate is located, we're going to add the certificate snap-in with my user account. And if you dig under the personal certificate, here's the user certificate we just got from the server, and under the root certificate, we can see there's an LM root CA that's currently or being trusted. Okay. Everything looks good on the web enrollment side. Let's hop back to the server and see the result that we have for the issue certificate. If you refresh here, ID number 5 is the user certificate we just did. Open it up, administrator right there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is the SCEP certificate request. But what we first have to do is, by default, when you want to use SCEP to request a certificate for a device, there's additional security mechanisms based on a challenge password. So every time a device by default needs to obtain a certificate through SCEP, you need to generate a one-time challenge password for it to use. So there's a specific URL that you need to go with the ls localhost serve, and that would be mscep admin. So without this password by default, your device will not succeed in getting the certificate through SCEP. So again, I'm gonna get straighter password. And here, once you hit that URL, show you the hash value of the certificate, and then you also have a challenge password that if you refresh, I will change. So let's make a note of that. Just be careful, there's a trailing space at the end that you do not want to copy over. So copy. Great. Bring up my notepad, paste that, just keep it on the side. Now we're going to hop onto R1 and we're going to start our configuration. So the first you need to check and make sure you have a domain name configured. Okay, and let's see if we have a key generated already. Looks like we do. So we're going to have the key. Okay. Wait, looks like we have a trust point created earlier, so let's delete that. Okay. I'm just going to show you how to create the key in case you do not have that already. So it will be crypto key, generate RSA. You can do modulus, which is the key length 1024 or anything higher if you want. And then we're just going to call it general keys. And if you happen to have a need to use multiple crypto keys, you can also put a label at the end so you can distinguish them. But here we're just going to do a general key. So I'm just going to overwrite the key that we already have, which is not a problem. Then the next thing you need to do is to create a crypto PKI, although it used to be called crypto CA. With the recent iOS release, it becomes a PKI trust point. We're going to call it LM root CA. With the question mark, there's several parameters that you can use, but the one that's important to us is the enrollment URL. You can do a manual enrollment by creating the certificate request by doing the enrollment terminal, but here we're going to do it through the SCEP protocol, so it's going to become a URL, and with HTTP there's a specific URL that you need to configure, and this has not changed since Windows 2003, so it's exact same URL. Okay, then we're going to give it a fully qualified domain name with the being R1 LabMinutes.com with the subject name CA equal we're going to use the same name here. OU equal, call it IT. O being organization equal LabMinutes. State CA. Country US. Okay, now we're going to disable revocation check using none. And now we're good to go. So before I initiate the SCEP protocol, I'm going to bring up my Wireshark so you can see, or at least understand how that works in the background. So right now I have a span session configured on the R1 router interface on the switch side, which is FAST01. So I'll bring up Wireshark with the capture filter specific to the server IP, which is 32.40. Just to test. Okay, and I ping, I can see my ping, so I know my capture is running fine. Okay, now I'm going to go crypto PKI authenticate first to obtain the root certificate that the router needs to trust. So authenticate root CA. Okay, let's see what's going on here. It said there's something in the certificate that it does not like, and it looks like the time is off. And this is why it's very essential for you to have a correct time on the router. See, it's back in 2011. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the clock. Looks like time zone is correct, so it'll be clock set. Right now is 22:47, 15 SCEP. Okay, so let's try that again with the correct clock. Alright. You can see there's activities happening in the background, which we'll take a look in a second. And now it's showing you the fingerprint. Just accept with yes. Okay, you do show crypto PKI certificate. And now we have a self-signed root certificate stored in the local router. So stop the capture real quick and do a TCP stream. Actually, let's change that to 2 and follow that. You can see the router sends a GET request, HTTP request with the particular URL, and the server replies with its certificate, although it's not so much readable, but you can kind of pick up, like here we said an email of the server, the CA certificate. And so on and so forth. So, okay, let's clear that. And next we're gonna configure R1 to request its own certificate. So the command for that is crypto PKI enroll, and same thing, which is the trust point name. That would be lm-rouge-ca. Okay, now this is where it asks you for the password. So this would be the challenge password that we obtained earlier from the server itself. So just need to paste that and then paste it again. Do you want to include the serial? No. IP address? No. And then request your certificate. Okay. See here with the lock message, certificate received from the certificate authority, and at the same time there's some activity here on the Wireshark. So basically SCEP is just a HTTP communication. It's nothing more than that. So again, if you look at show crypto PKI certificate, we should now see the R1's certificate right here with the name and the CNOU. Everything that we have specified under the trust point is being incorporated under that certificate. And if you go back and take a look at the certificate on the server, and now the certificate from belongs to R1 is shown up as ID 6, and you can see certificate template is based on the LM IPsec offline request that we created. So everything looks good. Okay, now R1 has successfully requested their certificate. Now it has a certificate stored locally, which it can use for authentication of any services that you decide to put on R1. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else interesting to look at. Log, certificate services, everything looks good. And now you have your certificate server up and running, and it's capable of SCEP protocol as well. Okay, so that wraps up our videos on the installation of Certificate Server in Windows 2008. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.